This is the late Cretaceous. This is the Hell Creek Formation. Not a paradise, but an evolutionary pressure cooker, where the only rule was structural survival. Here, existence was measured in tons of muscle, tons of armor, and sheer predatory force. We focus on the 10-ton dinosaur Triceratops, a species whose very anatomy was a morphological response to its environment. It was built low, dense, and armed with penetrating weapons. Its two massive brow horns and bony shield were not for display alone. They were the specialized counterforce against the ultimate terrestrial threat.
This is not an anomaly. It is a breeding female, a 10-ton dinosaur Triceratops mother. Her massive bony frill scarred from previous intraspecies conflict. She defends a simple mound of earth, her nesting site. This is the late Cretaceous. This is the Hell Creek Formation. It is an arena that demands resource commitment. Survival is not granted here. It is contested. When the shadow of a tyrant predator falls upon this nest, she does not initiate flight. She pivots to meet the threat, adopting a defensive stance, lowering 3 massive keratin-sheathed weapons. The threat is immediately recognized and counted. This is the chronicle of Dinosaur Triceratops, the apex herbivore in a lost ecosystem. Its survival record is permanently imprinted in fossilized bone, the greatest rival species in a lost world. Subject: Dinosaur Triceratops. The nomenclature means 3-horned face, a fitting anatomical feature for a massive defense organism. Its existence spanned the final 2 million years of the Cretaceous period, from 68 to 66 million years ago. This creature belonged to the heavyweight class. Estimates place its peak mass at up to 12 tons, a terrestrial weight equivalent to 2 contemporary bull elephants. This sheer tonnage dictates its interaction with the environment and its competitors. The dinosaur Triceratops species morphology is optimized for robust survival. It is a low-slung quadrupedal herbivore, primarily built to process tough vegetation using its powerful, specialized beak and dental battery. Yet, the entire cranial structure and body mass were dedicated to conflict and defense. It was rarely simple prey. It was genetically selected to be a resilient component of its ecosystem. To analyze this organism, you must first understand the selective pressures of the environment, specifically the Hell Creek Formation of North America, covering parts of modern Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. This was the end of the Cretaceous, a time of immense volcanic activity and climatic stress. The world was poised on a knife edge of instability. This habitat was not a stable, low-stress environment or a tranquil prehistoric paradise. It was a chaotic coastal floodplain, dense with forests and swamps. Volcanic ashfall was a constant factor, impacting the quality of vegetation and the survival of species. This habitat was, paleontologically speaking, a crucible. This environment was an evolutionary pressure cooker, a gladiator pit demanding perfection or extinction. Structural competition was constant. Here, every major terrestrial species represented a competing survival strategy. The fortress. Dinosaur Ankylosaurus, the armored organism, functionally impervious to external assault from above. It hunkered down, relying on its scutes and massive tail club to negate threats. The Titan. Dinosaur Edmontosaurus, the large migratory herd dweller. They relied on their staggering numbers and sheer size, capable of rearing up to graze high branches and maintain watch over the vast open plains. This intense biomechanical arms race defined the ecosystem. Every species was a specialized survivor, honed by the pressures of the late Cretaceous. And then there was the apex terrestrial predator, the tyrant species that imposed maximum selective pressure. Dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus rex. This gigantic theropod defined the very concept of fear for 2 million years. This was the competitive neighborhood dinosaur Triceratops occupied. It was an ecosystem that eliminated non-optimized anatomical features. Obligatory survival traits had to be genetically enforced. Survival was not guaranteed. It had to be earned every single day. Dinosaur T-Rex was the primary hunter. Dinosaur Ankylosaurus was the fortress. But Dinosaur Triceratops was genetically differentiated. It was the rival, a fighter built to meet overwhelming predatory force with equal specialized counterforce. Its entire anatomy was a morphological response to predation, a declaration of war. The frontal assault of the T-Rex presented a unique defensive problem. Its massive bite force and bone-crushing jaws meant any vulnerability was instantly fatal. Therefore, the dinosaur Triceratops evolved a doctrine of absolute frontal defiance. Its defensive posture was critical. The T-Rex would attempt to flank the ceratopsian, circling to avoid the horns and land a disabling bite on the soft body. But the dinosaur Triceratops knew the engagement dynamics. It would pivot with explosive, surprising speed, rotating its vast bulk to keep its armed head facing the threat. This constant, tense maneuvering resulted in a tactical deadlock. This was the tactical stalemate that defined Hell Creek, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. The evidence of this stalemate is compelling. Paleontologists have found dinosaur Triceratops frills bearing puncture wounds from T-Rex teeth. Crucially, these wounds show clear signs of healing. We also have brow horns bitten clean through and healed over. These are not trophies of a kill. They are receipts from a battle fought and won. This rewrites the predatory narrative, proving dinosaur Triceratops was an opponent the T-Rex recognized as a major risk factor and very likely feared. The anatomy of the dinosaur Triceratops is a masterwork of biological defense and offense. The primary weapons. The two massive brow horns. These were not ornamental structures. They were solid bone structures, extending over 3 feet long, approaching 1 meter in length. They were anchored to a skull that itself functioned as a 1-ton impact structure. These were penetrating weapons. They were angled forward, perfectly positioned to intercept a charging theropod. This was the defensive arsenal of a creature optimized for engagement. The shield. The massive, solid, bony frill. For decades, scientists debated its primary purpose: display, muscle anchoring, or pure defense. The evidence, written in the fossil record, confirms multiple uses. First, the frill was a billboard, likely used in displays of fitness, perhaps featuring vibrant, saturated colors, analogous to modern mandrills, to signal genetic quality to conspecifics. Second, and critically, it was a vital anchoring point. It provided the massive surface area for the attachment of immense jaw muscles, giving the animal the biting power required to process tough vegetation. Third, and most importantly against large predators, it protected the vulnerable cervical vertebrae, the neck, from a fatal bite. The frill itself was composed of incredibly thick, solid bone, capable of resisting the bone-crushing forces of the T-Rex's jaws. The fossil record confirms that T-Rex teeth often scraped and failed to penetrate the bony shield, leaving non-fatal, healed gouges. This combination of cranial weaponry and cervical shield was a revolutionary adaptation. It allowed dinosaur Triceratops to maintain its position. It could not outrun a dinosaur Tyrannosaurus rex. It was genetically selected to pivot and defend. A resolute, unmoving, and strategically impenetrable opponent. But the arena's greatest selective pressure was not exclusively the apex predator. The most intense structural competition was often against its own species. The competition for territory, the competition for status,
and the competition for reproductive rights. When two adult male dinosaur Triceratops met, this was rival versus rival, a duel of titans. They would lock horns, engaging in a brutal test of raw pushing strength, maneuvering for leverage.